This video is brought to you by Xavi's new Star Trek merch line. After the terrific opening episode of Picard, hopes were high for this follow-up. While it's not as captivating as the premiere, there's still a lot to like. All my praise in regards to Patrick Stewart's performance, the general production values of the show, and the direction of the story still stand. But obviously, you don't want to hear me repeat myself, so let's dive into some other aspects. Overall, rather than racing through the plot, this episode is more focused on context. We're given a lot more info to recontextualize the motivations of various characters and organizations in the story. Episode 1 was Picard's time to shine, but here we get a more in-depth look at the larger supporting cast and the world they inhabit. I love the opening flashback to the Mars disaster over a decade earlier. It seems synths ended up occupying an uncomfortable place in society the same way holographic entities did. In Voyager, we saw many decommissioned EMH Mark Is put to work in essentially slave-like jobs. The same goes for these synths, it seems. While obviously we saw Starfleet rule that Data had rights, it seems the same isn't true for every synth. I've seen a lot of folk bring this up as a "the Federation would never do this" complaint, but while the Federation may have many fantastic things, their record is far from spotless, even in the 24th century. There's a strange limbo zone for artificial life forms. Obviously Data was sentient and alive, but the PC I'm using to make this video on isn't. The line which divides smart tools from actual life forms seems to be blurred even centuries in the future. It's uncomfortable to think about, but it makes sense, even in Star Trek. I always like getting a good look at the civilian side of Star Trek, as it's so rare. This show in general being largely planet-based so far gives it a grounded and practical feel. There's definitely some hacking going on here though, right? I've seen some people say that the Romulans may be responsible for this, but to me that doesn't quite fit with what we learn in the rest of the episode. I love the idea of this Romulan Empire boogeyman organization, something more secretive and dangerous than even the Tal Shiar, and their motivations in stopping advanced artificial life forms from developing is an interesting idea. If you've never read The Artilect War by Hugo de Garis, then please do so because it's kind of fascinating. It outlines a lot of in-depth reasons to be opposed to intelligent or sentient machines which go beyond simple technophobia. Obviously the Romulans do use loads of technology like every other race, so AI being so strongly opposed shows us we're in for some potentially very nuanced Westworld-like thematic exploration. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by a new Star Trek merch line now available at Xavi.com. A slew of brand new, very cool designs to satiate your Star Trek itch. I myself really like this Section 31-esque jumper, which I was kindly gifted with. It's got a really nice embroidered design, one of many really cool designs in this range, and is pretty cozy for these winter months. Click the link below on the 29th and use the promo code BATTLE20 for 20% off the Star Trek range, or the code BATTLE10 for 10% off the site-wide items. Thank you once again to Xavi for sponsoring this video, and now back to Star Trek Picard. As I mentioned earlier, this episode gives us a better look at the supporting cast of the series. Isa Briones continues to showcase her acting talent, now playing the scientific researcher Soji. While Daj was a younger and more naive character, Soji is a more seasoned space traveler and has developed a stronger temperament because of it. And Harry Treadaway nails that hot but suspicious balance as Narek. Both actors clearly have the capabilities to stick the landing when the inevitable double-cross and heartbreaking betrayals start mounting up, but at the same time, it's possible the show may not go down the predictable route. I love everything about this abandoned Borg cube though. The music, direction and production design succeed in bringing back some of that Lovecraftian atmosphere to the Borg. You constantly expect some drones to suddenly leap up from the tables and for the whole operation to go south. It's subtle, but it's very nicely done. Picard clashing with the Starfleet leadership is also fun. Again, this is another thing I've seen people bring up as Starfleet would never do that, except for all the times in the show this exact same thing has happened. I agree with Space Doc, however, in that it would have been so awesome to have Picard clash once again with Admiral Nechayev. It was always great to see them butt heads in TNG. Dr. Jurati, played by Alison Pill, was a highlight I didn't have time to mention in the premiere, and I'm glad she's not just a one-off character. She continues the long-standing Star Trek tradition of genius scientists or engineers who are instantly likable and quirky. I also loved the joke about Picard simply not getting science fiction, and furthermore, name-dropping Isaac Asimov has my hopes high for that thematic exploration I mentioned earlier. Overall, this episode was a nice build-up segment of the story, an exploration of the characters and this new era of Star Trek. The supporting players are a great collection of actors and characters, and I can't wait to see more of Michelle Hurd's Raffi Massacre. Did it suck? No. While it wasn't as thrilling as the premiere, this was still a solid episode which continues to have me wanting to know and see more. Michael Lewis asks, If you could make a Lovecraftian video game, where would you set it? I would go for a space setting personally. I know the typical approach is for a turn-of-the-century Earth kind of setting, but I've always been more keen on space. I was super keen on the Moons of Madness when it came out, for example. In the lore for the Mi-Go, there's this planet called Yuggoth, which I've always found really fascinating. It's basically like the ancient city from At the Mountains of Madness, but with a bunch of other cool outer space cosmic beings inhabiting it. A survival horror game where your ship crash lands on Yuggoth or something, that could be really cool. Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new uploads. Over on my Patreon, you can see videos early. Speaking of such, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.